Great. This does show us live. I'm going to just double check right here.
Good.
Awesome. I'm seeing us. And I also see some people that have begun to join us on this broadcast. So we'll get this kicked off with some basic housekeeping as more people start seeing us as well. Then we can transition into the content of this program. But good morning, afternoon, evening. Thank you so very much for tuning in to all of our broadcasts. I am, of course, your host here for the Westminster Chamber. And every Monday, we bring to you the city updates. Generally, they are by our councilors, our mayor, Mayor Pro Tem on rotation to give you a new perspective, some feedback on projects they have of interest, and just overall what the councilors are up to, what's transpiring at City Hall that you should be informed of. So if this is your very first time on our page, then I want to encourage you to like this page. Be sure that you're following it as well so that the algorithm alerts you when we go live in the future. If you are viewing this, of course, on YouTube, then we'd ask you to hit the subscribe button so you can get notified, of course, once we're live. And even thereafter, there's a nice little push notification that tells you a video is available for you to rewatch, which allows you to rewatch and replay not only this video, but any of the videos that we've had to date are available to you in the video section here on our Facebook page. And they're also available to you on the video section on YouTube, should you be watching this as it's streamed on both platforms, Facebook and YouTube. Now, our broadcasts allow you to not only hear updates on the city, but we also have a broadcast on Wednesdays that welcomes some of our newer partners to the organization. It's a great way to see some of the faces behind those businesses that are local, maybe you've driven by, maybe you've stopped into. And then every now and then we also use this platform to give you updates on our county. Jefferson County updates are once a month by our Jeffco County Commissioner, Tracy Kraft-Tharp, generally on the last Friday of the month. If you don't already know, last week was city council candidate interviews, not a forum, it was interviews. And those were streamed here on both of our channels, Facebook and YouTube. It's a great way for you to get to know the candidates. And honestly, they're candid questions that we were able to ask them. Some of them are standard ones that you would actually hear in an interview. Some were just get to know you. This week, so this Thursday, October the 19th, we will have our in-person candidate forum, which are, if you haven't been to any of our candidate forums in person, they're very structured. They're super for you to hear about these candidates and their feedback on particular issues that come up shared by our business community. So October the 19th, this Thursday, you'll find details about that candidate forum on our website. It's at City Hall in person, and you can also view it on the city's page as they'll be streaming and recording it for you as well. So that's the brief updates that I wanted to delve into. You can always comment on our video as Mayor Nancy McNally has already done, giving us a quick good morning message. You too can share any additional pleasantries in the comment section. You can affirm some of the things that we're saying. You can even disagree with some of what we talk about. But if there's content or topics that you're really curious about, feel free to type those into the chat for us. And of course, if there are additional questions on any of the information that our Mayor Pro Tem is sharing today, you can also type them in the comments section and we'll pull them once we're at a pause in our chat. So Mayor Pro Tem DeMott, thank you for your patience as I've, spewed all this information at the start a little bit longer than usual, just with the add-on of upcoming events and activities that are underway. But I did want to just give some of the ground rules for people. I know you always provide us some details and some great content for us to be able to delve into. So with that, I do want to have you take this away and give a quick shout out to KO Real Estate for tuning in and being on here with us.
Cool. Thanks, Juliet. Always appreciate the opportunity to talk to your membership and anybody who listens to your video podcast. One thing I wanted to bring up first, and this is, so as you know, most people have cell phones now. Not a lot of people have home phones. And so, as a city, one of the challenges that brings up is emergency services. So, like, if we have to do like a reverse 911 to let you know of a dangerous situation in your community and you don't have a home phone, that's a little difficult to do. So, I shared a link with you if you could share it with your viewers. And this is to sign up with our emergency notification system. The city is aggressively trying to get people to register for this. And this basically would sign you up so that if your home address is a certain place and there's a situation in that certain place, you would get notified on your device that there may be something you need to be attent to. So very important for people to sign up with that system. If your viewers, if they haven't, I would really highly recommend that they do, and they let their neighbors know to sign up for that as well. We're not the only ones who use this type of system, so if you're outside of Westminster, I recommend you look into it, see if it's what your municipality uses. If not, figure out what they do use, because if you're like most people anymore, we all have cell phones, and you want to make sure that you know what's going on if there's a situation that first responders need to let you know about. So I wanted to pitch that. One other thing I was going to bring up that I know we're all excited about this year is the 66th anniversary of our charter. So those of you who are nerd out on municipality law and such, the city's going to be doing a celebration around this being the 66th year since our charter was written. I'm trying to think what I have a handful of things today. One of the things that Juliet, you and I both participated in a couple weeks ago was the groundbreaking at Uplands. And I think that was pretty exciting. The governor joined us. There's some much needed housing that is going to be going in there, as well as some other places in the city. And I wanted to mention it because I know that the city is starting to go forward with our housing needs assessment study. And so the last one, I believe, was completed in 2017. And so, as we near build out, we got to keep looking and seeing, what the changing demographics are and what kind of stock that we need, what kind of stock we even have room for. So, and this gets into, do we have the right balance of affordability or affordable housing or workforce housing versus marketplace housing? So a lot of different data points that they're going to be looking into, but the city is moving forward with that housing needs assessment. And I think that that's going to be very useful to the council as we look forward into the future and near build out as a city. I want to pause real quick just to see if there's any questions you have or things that you think I should clarify on what I've went through so far.
No, I think those were great. And I think that was really important for you to talk about with the emergency alerts in particular. So often we saw this, especially with the Marshall Fire, is that things are happening in the community and people are curious about, what's going on? How does it affect me? And sometimes the social media, even though all of our agencies get on that as a way to communicate effectively to people, it may not be just as in real time as them as they're sending through the system. They've got people that are staying on top of it. So I totally support exactly what you shared around the emergency alerts. If you haven't already signed up, they're free. Get that done so you can at least have that peace of mind. And I don't see additional comments that have come through on any of the other items that we've talked about, including that Uplands groundbreaking, although I will also share that was quite a monumentous occasion, and it also signified, some tremendous opportunity for providing options for people of all levels in our community to be able to access housing. So.
Yeah, I would say, that's a big development. There are going to be far more pieces of it that come forward to council. So, if you're in that community and you want to make your voice heard, certainly make sure that you pay attention to different things that get posted, and then as they develop that out, so that you can give your feedback as they move forward with, developing that. I think it's 104 acres worth of property. On that same note, council has been, and this was something that Mayor McNally brought forward when she came back and took back over as mayor. In other cities, such as Broomfield was kind of the one we looked at, where they have a process where developers can come forward and just bring forward concepts and say, here's a concept that, we're looking at developing, and just kind of get a temperature on a council and the community to see, does this something that really fits? Mm-hmm. we have put in place that same kind of process as a city, and I want to say we've done probably about 8 of these now. And they are, as they say, they make us read a whole thing that our comments are gratuitous in nature and they're not binding, meaning nothing that comes out of those meetings necessarily. A developer could say, we could say we don't really like this. They could say we're still going to apply for this and prove that it meets your criteria, and they can move forward with it. Or they could take the feedback that we give and incorporate it. It's just a good way for us to kind of know what's coming down the pipe, but also to allow developers to get some feedback from community representatives such as the council to see is there ways that they can make developments better if they move forward. And so if they then take a project that they've presented to council and they make an official application, nothing is binding or anything from those meetings, but it's just a good temperature check. So we've done a handful of those in the recent months since we put that into place, and so far it seems like it's worked fairly well. And then the last thing I had on my list as far as developments is there was a rezoning public hearing for, if you're familiar with the Midlands building that's down off of 72nd. That's been one that's been it's brought up to council a lot because it's had a lot of problems between unhoused trying to camp out there, a lot of graffiti, and just not in kind of in disrepair since it was a charter school for some time, probably about a little over a decade ago. But they are actually going to rezone that into kind of I think it's going to be, I'm trying to remember exactly, it's like commercial on the bottom, like live workspace, and then just some live space on the top. And so I don't remember exactly how many units, but that rezoning was approved last meeting on first reading, so I believe they have to come back for one more reading. Interesting development. That's, like I said, that's been kind of a problem property since even before I was on council that I've heard about. So I think that is a positive development to see something happening with that property in that area. Two other things that I had on my list that I wanted to share with folks is, one, I thought it was neat that we got to do a proclamation for Indigenous people and Columbus Day this last week. I did a lot, and that's neat to me because I am both Native American and an Italian American. So when the ask to do Indigenous People Day came up, and there are, this is one of those hot topics, and I won't go too into it, but some people don't like Columbus Day. And one of the things that I looked at is like the Biden administration last year did Columbus Day, and I started doing some reading on Columbus Day. And the reason that 100 plus years ago that they did Columbus Day as a nation is because there was actually 11 Italian American folks that got lynched, and that was migrants that had, and that is the reason that we as a country started doing Columbus Day. It was more about the Italian Americans than anything, and showing that the country valued them and they had a place here in our country. And so I thought that was an interesting thing that I didn't even realize. And really, there's some folks that want to go one way or another, and I, being both, wanted to kind of really look at how do we as a society move forward, understanding that we have a very bad past when it comes to a lot of different things, be it Italian Americans, or I am a member of the Potawatomi Nation is the tribe that I'm a member of. And so I don't know if you've ever heard of the Trail of Death, but that's basically when they marched my people from one part of the country into another part and into the Indian Territory. So just very personal to me. And for me, I want to find a way that we can unify as a community and move forward. And so I worked very hard with the Inclusivity Board, and we did 2 separate proclamations on the same day, and still open discussion, I'm sure, as a nation, how we can do better. But I thought it was really neat. We had a Indigenous person who, Rich Chamberlain, who's on the Inclusivity Board, had brought, who's a friend of his, and she had some words that she shared with us. I thought it was a really nice moment for the city in my mind. So I wanted to share that with your viewers because that, like I said, is something that we put a lot of work into, and there was a lot of personal feelings around it, and I thought it was a neat step for the city. Last, I wanted to talk about budget. So we passed the first reading of the budget last week, and so that is a really big thing for the city. That's one of the main priorities of city council and responsibilities is to approve a budget that is brought forward to us from the city manager. One of the things that is brought forward into that is water rates, and that's always a hot topic. And so, and I'm sure I've talked to your group and you about water rates ad nauseum in the past. There was a 4.5% increase, and this is something that I kind of pushed back on through the process, and asked about cutting that in half and finding different ways for us to accomplish capital needs in the utility with not always using water rates. There is in Colorado with Tabor, there's rules around what a utility could do because the water is a utility. And with that, you can do, I think it's 10% of your operating costs you could take from your general fund. And there's a lot of feelings around that. And there's some language in our charter around that. And, you know, during our budget process, my ask was, and I had some specific ways that we could try to cut that down and only do a 2.25% increase instead of 4.5%. And there was, you know, pretty vigorous debate around that. And I eventually pulled my ask with the understanding that this next year the city is going to aggressively look at ways for us to not come back with 4.5%, because if you followed the water plant discussion, we had modeled over 10 years what it would look like to do 4.5% a year over 10 years and how we would be able to fund the water plant. Understanding that, like, I'm specifically the one who threw out 4.5%, and the reason I did 4.5% was it seems like a good middle of the road. Understanding costs of things are always going to go up, but I wanted a ceiling that basically, for me as a council person, I said that's my limit. So 4.5%. If you brought anything beyond that, I will not vote for it. Obviously, there's 6 other people who could, but that's kind of where that model grew out of. But for me, it was never you absolutely are going to get 4.5% every year. And so this exercise, I think, is really important for us as a city and a utility to say, how could we deliver the needs in a different way, be it, you know, pulling 10% from the general fund, or, you know, looking at grants or the different ways that we could do things, and actually having a goal that says, instead of just doing 4.5% because the model said it, let's look at ways to actually come back with something different. And so I got council majority to agree on that, and the city staff said we can do that. So moving forward, they're going to vigorously look at that. And I again stated that when we passed this budget, that's my expectation, because that was one of the big, you know, that's a big thing for me. I understand that for me, I've told people before, the cost is always going to go up. That's something we can't control. We can't control when chemicals become more expensive, but what we can control is how we look at projects, how we fund projects, and how we spend our dollars ultimately. So I think that's a good in between. I would have preferred to still have less of an increase this year, but, you know, ultimately I still think that's a good path forward. And I think that exercise long term is healthy for the city, because ultimately you want them to do that every year. We should be going through that exercise every year saying, how can we make this as small of an increase as possible, but still meet the needs of the utility? I'm going to pause there for a minute, and I have one other thing that I will bring up, but I want to see if you have any questions or if anybody of your listeners do.
Well, we just had a quick comment that came through from our YouTube viewer, David Carpenter, giving a quick hello our way. I also see a couple other folks that are just watching with us, like Jerry. So thank you guys for being on here with us. We're giving some quick updates on what's going on at the city, particularly with council, even with some of the updates that have been happening between the last couple weeks until now. Mayor Pro Tem DeMott has shared about the emergency alert system. He shared about some developments that have been approved on first reading that have been in the works for some time. We've even talked about recent groundbreakings have moved into the discussion on proclamations for Indigenous People Day and the origination of Columbus Day. And then he's even just recently discussed some of those additional details around the budget and what that looks like and how that's come up. We've delved slightly more into the water rates. I know that has, as to echo your sentiment, Mayor Pro Tem DeMott, we've talked about that I feel a number of times during the process as it was coming to fruition, what that looked like, how it was, how it made sense, and why it landed on where it was. So, if any of you have any comments or questions about the information that Mayor Pro Tem DeMott is sharing, you can always type those into the chat section. Whether or not you agree with him, believe me, he is knows that not everyone agrees with him, so you can definitely comment those thoughts into the chat. We always love to hear both sides, and then past that, if you have questions about anything in particular about what he's sharing or something he hasn't spoken to that you were hoping that he does, please be sure that you type it into the comment section so that we can see that and pull that on the screen for Mayor Pro Tem DeMott. So I'll have you continue through, and if I see anything, then we can plan on bringing that up here after some of the items that you continue to touch on.
Yeah, and I think kind of what you just said hits on the last thing that I was going to bring up. And so obviously it's election time, and one way or another, I have 2 more years of my second term. And so I'm going to have to work with whoever the voters decide to send forward to be their representative. So my only ask to people is, make sure that you get educated on the issues and what people stand for, and really, their knowledge of things. I've heard a lot of interesting stuff throughout your guys' interviews and the forums. And I know, like you mentioned, there's another forum, and I plan on attending this week, and I appreciate that the chamber puts those on. I think it's very important for people to, hear from candidates who want to represent them in the city. It's a big job. It's important. I admire anybody who's willing to step into these positions and take the risk to run for office. It's a lot of work. But there's a lot of interesting things going on about, what should be done with water rates, what are water rates versus another municipalities. That's not all one for one. Like, if you nerd out as much as I do on this kind of stuff, you could know that if you look at Brookfield, for example, maybe their per 1,000 kgals is different, but they have a lot of different fees. And so if you look at the net of somebody's bill, is it really that much different? But then you also have to look at that organization has different costs than our organization has. I've heard, and this is something else that we've approved, and I believe I heard the mayor talk about it when she was on with you last time. We've approved a new courthouse, and those certificates of participation, which is how we fund things. Those are already signed, and I hear people saying, that they may be able to stop that. So, I mean, the short of it is, it's important to be educated on the people you're voting for. It's easy to, make statements and promises when you're running for office. And I will tell you this, even for my own shoes, it's far harder to sit in these seats and actually make the decisions than it is to be a candidate. Once you actually get all the information and you have to sift through it, and it's a heavy weight. And you, to your earlier point too, people are not always going to agree with you, but that doesn't necessarily mean wrong, right, or different decisions. Yeah. So I just want to make that extra ask, and the biggest ask is to participate in your election because they matter. I think the most deflating thing that I still think being in municipal government is how few people actually do vote in them, because the things that we do change your life tomorrow, where the things that they do in DC, they're going to cause you trouble or be good for you down the road. So they're both just as important, but voting in your municipal election is very, very important. And like I said, we can change things for you tomorrow. So you want to make sure that you have people who, echo your values and are educated in what they're going to do, because it is a big job, and the more educated they are, the faster they can get up to speed and be a member. Ultimately, what I hope out of the election is whoever gets elected, the 3 people come, that they can work with the 4 of us that are going to be there for the next 2 years, because we're a body, and the better of a team we are, even with different views, I think the better it is for the city. And, I think if having different views is very helpful, because sometimes we're not thinking of things a way that one of our colleagues are, and ultimately they may be able to persuade us and look at things a different way than we were. So I think that diversity of thought is important when you have a body like the City of Westminster's Council.
Yeah, so well said. And I will pull up the link quickly for those folks. If you didn't watch our streams last week and are interested in learning more about the candidates, or if you did watch our streams last week, we still encourage you to go to our candidate page. We've linked all of the campaign pages on this site. We've listed out all of them, so not just city council, we've even listed our school board races, and those details as well. Please take the time to go out there and learn more about these candidates. This is all supposed to be a great way for you to get a snapshot of who they are and then have an interest in learning more, so you're just informed when you're going to the polls. And I want to kind of inject in addition to what you were saying, a lot of times you do get there and then you get more information about the things. And so sometimes when there should be a little bit of grace that's given to some of the candidates as well, because if you get into place and you truly wanted to change something or stop something or whatever that might be for current, past, or or future people that come their way, sometimes they get in, and when you have more information, you realize where you can really plug and make a difference, and where they're able to adjust. I know that has been such a hot discussion even around water rates and things like that. So just kind of be mindful of sometimes it's not that they didn't change it or they didn't change it exactly how they wanted to. They've had to kind of adapt to the information that was provided to them. There was a comment that came through from our KO Real Estate who's tuned in with us. It's a comment. It's not a question. She just wanted to share some sentiments that she's seen from her lens or that they've seen from their lens about the real estate market continuing to shift with supply and demand, essentially being a factor in this, and apartments being at a low for some of the tenants that are there, but the inability for those first-time home buyers to buy and find the options for them to transition to their next step in a condo, townhome, or whatever that might be, and also a decline that's seen in some of the people that are kind of coming to our state with some of these rising costs associated with housing. So thank you for sharing those thoughts our way and for tuning in with us. And just wanted to quickly display that for you, Mayor Pro Tem DeMott. If you had anything in addition you wanted to share, you can. But again, it was just a comment that was shared our way.
No, I appreciate the perspective. I mean, it certainly is a balance that we're constantly having to look at, and oftentimes in politics, people pick out talking points, and in the housing is probably one of the ones that we hear it a lot. And housing is one of the most complex things, and it crosses so many different problems. Like homelessness is always one that's brought up with the affordability. The homeless problem, that's housing costs is one section of the problem with homelessness. There's so many other things. So all those different perspectives are really important, because there's not going to be a silver bullet solution to homelessness or housing in Colorado. And so we need to try to be as mindful to all those different areas and try to figure out how we chip away at the issues that are affecting different folks across the spectrum. So the last thing that I wanted to do is thank Juliet for all her time at the chamber. I know that she's moving on to a different position, and so I appreciate the friendship and partnership that we have with both you and the chamber, and all the work that you've done for our community. I know that we'll still see you around. I'm sure you've made too many friends here for you to totally check out on us. But I just wanted to say thank you for all you've done for our community.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem DeMott. It's been a fun 7 years to be here to see what we could have collaborated on and what we were able to make possible. And the best thing about all of this and what I've shared with folks is that we are all here, whether you're serving in office, whether you're making a difference in your community, in your job, and whatever role you hold, is to always leave it better than what it was prior to. And I'm so glad to kind of leave it where it is. I know that the relationship will continue with the city, will continue with our city councilors, regardless of my presence here. But you're absolutely right. I won't be completely disconnecting. I've told folks, I have a good number of friends, a good number of businesses that I support that I'll be back for on a pretty regular basis. So you'll probably see me a lot more relaxed in casual gear rather than in my everyday workwear when I am in the area. But thank you for those comments, and thank you to the comments I see you over at KO Real Estate as well. The people make everything, and Westminster is just I said it when I took over 7 years back. There's so much to be in our community, so much opportunity for not just growth, adaptability, inclusivity, all of those amazing things that make people want to live, work, and breathe here. And I'm just excited that we've got a great mix, a great organization, and it'll continue to skyrocket. So thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem. Um, We'll be back on here with a broadcast, of course, on Wednesday. You guys can't get rid of me that fast. I'll be here for a few more weeks, and I'll continue to be front and center as best as I can until you meet our new transition. So thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yep,
I don't see any additional questions or comments, so I'll give you the rest of your morning, and I look forward to seeing you at our forums.
All right. Thanks, Juliet.